Right, should we get things going? All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. Who's here? So today, this session is just focusing on locking down security and really kind of focusing on some probably helpful tips or steering guides on what New Zealand businesses, particularly kind of small to medium businesses, should be looking at to kind of make sure they're on top of their security. So just a quick run through about me, first of all. I'm the operations manager here at Stratos, and I've been working in IT for about 27 years. I've had a very keen interest in security, and been involved in kind of cybersecurity incidents and putting in resolution plans and building up businesses' security models. Yeah, a lot of real interest there, and really out there in New Zealand, there's a lot of security frameworks around in the world, but there's a lot of stuff that we need to do that we can do that's practical. That we don't have to necessarily go through massive complexities, those sorts of things. A lot of businesses just don't have the infrastructure to do that. So I'm really focused and passionate about leveraging your existing tech stack as well. So there's a lot of stuff you probably have that you have access to that you're not using. So it's about making you aware of that as well. According to that photo, sometimes I wear a business shirt as well, but that's not very often. So a t-shirt. And I know security is a very exciting topic for most people, and that's probably enough for them. They're probably massive adrenaline surge just learning more things about security. But just in case you're one of the minority there that doesn't get super excited about security, throughout this presentation, I will be just referencing some photos from my dog's Instagram as well. Don't mess with the pug, just to keep you on your toes and engaged as well. So they're just kind of scattered throughout the presentation. So we're mainly focusing today on what's called the Essential 8. If you do have any questions as we go through this presentation, please just pop them into the chat or into the questions area. And we've got Mel here who will answer those, or will send them to me to answer at the end of the session. So any questions you have, just pop them in there. We might not get to them straight away, but we'll definitely go through them at the end. And we'll have a bit of a session there, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions then as well. Right, so Essential 8. So what is it? There's a lot of frameworks that are out there. Some of them might be like ISO 27001 you might have heard of. There's PCI DSS, which is like a credit card based one. But then there's this one called the Essential 8, and that's a lot more fit for purpose, I think, for New Zealand businesses. It's a lot more pragmatic. It's a lot more high level, and you don't have to have a lot of admin overhead to go through this and start ticking the boxes in what's called the Essential 8. So like I said, yeah, it's a great security framework for small, medium New Zealand businesses and much lower overhead. So it's a great starting point on your security journey as a business. You can focus on the Essential 8, and maybe once you've got that to a good maturity level and your business is growing, then you could look at some other frameworks as well. Here's a link to the Essential 8. It's an Australian based initiative, and Mel will be posting that in the chat as well. So you'll be able to click on that and go into it, and you can really dive into the detail there if you're interested in all the bits and pieces that put together the Essential 8. And so what is the Essential 8? Here it is. So it's a collection of 8 different categories of things we should want to focus on in terms of kind of really raising the bar on our security. And it's very real world as well. So these categories are actual things. They're not just kind of pie in the sky stuff that is just a box ticking exercise. These are all very real things you can do to actually improve your security. Of these, there are those that are more effective than others, and there are also those that are much easier to implement than others as well. So we're going to be focusing on 3 of the Essential 8 today. 2 of them are going to be ones that are relatively easy to implement with some decent gains in your security posture. And then we're going to focus on one as well, which has really, really good gains in terms of just security posture, but is a lot more challenging to implement as well. I thought it's worth kind of focusing on those so you have some quick wins in there, maybe a really good one that you might want to focus on and building towards that. I've done a wee kind of graph here, but it's kind of arbitrary as well. So your mileage may vary for your business, but I just thought at a general kind of high level, we've kind of rated the different categories here of the Essential 8 in terms of their effectiveness and then how difficult they are to adopt. So you can see we've got backups there, patch operating systems, patch applications, multi-factor authentication, restrict admin privileges, user application hardening, Office macros, and also application control. So the ones we're going to be focusing on today are going to be regular backups, because you can see there that is one that is pretty easy to do and also very effective. We're also going to focus on multi-factor authentication, which I'm sure a lot of us have heard of and is out there. But as with any of these things, the devil's in the detail as well. So we want to not just say, yeah, we've got multi-factor authentication. We'll give you a few things to think about. Say, are you really as covered as you should be in terms of achieving the goal of multi-factor authentication? And we'll do the same with the backups. And then we're also going to look at application control, which is one that's quite difficult to implement. It's very kind of technically challenging, but it's something that gives you some really good rewards as well when you implement it. If you're not aware, a quick summary, backups is essentially taking your data, a copy of your data, and storing a copy off-site. If I was to summarize that in a brief sentence. Multi-factor authentication is, you might be aware, you might have apps or text messages which have a number involved. So when you put your username and your password, those are the password is one factor of authentication, but then the next factor is having an app buzz you, or you put in a number. So it's more than just having your password to be able to log in. And application control, that's essentially where we say to our computer, at a high level, we send a policy to a computer and say, only these applications are permitted to run. So we might say, okay, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, and maybe we have a line of business app or a payroll app. Those ones are allowed to run, but everything else by default, we're just going to block. And what that means is if someone accidentally downloads a malicious bit of software or malware, they click on it to try and run it, it just won't run. And that's not because it detects it's a bad thing, that's just because it's on the list, the blacklist. Okay, so if we roll over to regular backups, here we go. So backups, again, there's a tendency to go, yes, we have our stuff backed up, but do we really? And what does that look like? So I've got 4 different kind of thinking points here to think about. The first thing here is what we call recovery point objective. So your recovery point objective is really an objective where you define how much data can you afford to lose, right? So we might be backing up once a day, and we might have an incident 12 hours after that backup, in which case our RPO for that would be 12 hours. We would lose 12 hours worth of data because that's the time that's elapsed since our backup. And so to work around that, we might say, actually, instead of doing 1 backup a day, we need to do 1 backup every hour because we can only afford to lose 1 hour's worth of data. Right, so most backup systems are flexible in that regard, and we can configure them how they want. Obviously, the more backups you do, the more storage you use, the higher the cost involved as well. But it's something you really should be thinking about is how much data can I afford to lose? Because if we're relying on a huge amount of sales transactions that are coming through, and we've only got 12 hours to go back, maybe that's a significant issue with our business, that if we lose all of that, then 12 hours worth of that, then we're in trouble. So that's our recovery point objective. Next up, we have recovery time objective. So this is where we have an incident, the actual amount of time it takes to get our data back and get back up and running. So we might say 1 hour is fine. Okay, so we're going to lose, might be fine to lose 12 hours worth of data, but we really need to be back up and running and get that data back within an hour of the incident happening. Or maybe we're fine with 12 hours. Or maybe we have different bits of data that we have different RTOs on. But regardless of that, we should be thinking about our different sets of data and what our backup RTO should be for those bits of data. Now, often I find that people have, they'll just want to default that everything is as quickly as possible. But having a low RTO, recovery time objective, generally has a sliding scale in terms of cost as well. So again, that's a key consideration, is the cost, or what we're prepared to pay for our backup system to give us a very low RTO. The next thinking point I've got on there is test restores. So we want our backups to work, but we also want to be able to restore. There's probably not much point having our backup if we can't actually use it to restore. So how do we validate that? Well, the best way to do that is to actually do a restore with the system. Again, the more complex your backup system as well, the more beneficial it is to do test restores. So at Stratos, we recommend doing it absolute minimum a monthly test restore to actually validate that your backup works. And that can just be restoring some sample data. It's not necessarily doing a big disaster recovery test where we restore absolutely everything and make sure it's all there. We really, at a minimum, just want to make sure at least some of the files that we're backing up are able to be restored, and then we can infer from that the chances are good that all the files can be restored. And if we want to go beyond that and have a more involved process, we do want to restore everything. That's fine too, and maybe we'll do that less regularly. Maybe we'll only do that annually, do a huge full system restore. And then the final thinking point I've got there on on regular backups is coverage. So again, we go, okay, tick box, we're backing up our data, but are we actually backing up all our data? So these days we've got different cloud systems. We might be using Xero, for example, for our accounting. And so have we thought about that and backing it up? Because most backup systems can't back up Xero. We might be abdicating our responsibility for backups to Xero as part of the service. But then we need to actually look at Xero and say, does Xero's backup policies align with our recovery point objective and our recovery time objective? So cloud services are a biggie to think about. Think about all your different applications that you run, where you're actually running those, and whose responsibility is the backup. And of that responsibility, does it align with our business policies? Right, so you can see from that yep, regular backups, it can be in some cases as easy as a tick box. Yes, I want to back this system up. But then we also need to think about all these different things as well in terms of restore. So backups I consider probably the most important thing from a security perspective to be able to implement, because it means if your system gets absolutely compromised, then you can kind of sleep a bit easier at night knowing that there's a system to the side that's got everything you can get back from. Next up, we have multi-factor authentication. So as I mentioned before, that's the essentially the implementation of having a second system in addition to passwords to be able to log into your account. So the reasoning behind this is that, let's say someone steals your password and have access to it, then they still can't access your system because your password is something you know, but you also have something you trust with you as well. And that's got the next factor that is also required to be able to log in. And that's often your phone, but it may not just be your phone. A multi-factor can be on a little dongle device. Some banks distribute those with a rotating number on it. And there are some apps as well that can just run on your computer that do multi-factor authentication as well. So there's lots of different ways of getting multi-factor authentication. But here's some key considerations, because you might have multi-factor set up on your system and you go, yes, tick, done that. But what about enforcement? So let's start off with that. So with an application that we might use, it might support multi-factor authentication. That's great, but we can't just end our questioning about the application there. We actually have to say, will this app enforce multi-factor authentication? And the difference there is, let's say we have staff member A who is new to the company. They log in, they can set up MFA, but without any enforcement, maybe they won't. And will we know that they haven't? Right, so some applications will not enforce MFA, but they'll have it there as an option. And so there's an element of trust there where that's the case, and you have to consider, is that risk worth it for your business with the application? Do you need to press the vendor to actually have some sort of enforcement? We've had some real world examples here at Stratos where we've had an application that we wanted to adopt that doesn't enforce multi-factor authentication, but does support it. And we actually said we need it to be enforced. And so they went away and implemented that for us, even though it wasn't actually a feature of their app. So it's definitely a question worth asking as well. It's one of those things where it's a lot easier to sleep at night if you know that all your applications actually enforce MFA, and so that when you are logging in, you know that all staff members have MFA turned on. Next, we need to think about applications. So, okay, we've got MFA turned on. We might have, most New Zealand businesses will use Microsoft 365 as a system, at least for emails. Okay, we've got MFA turned on for that, but what about all our other apps? And as I mentioned earlier, what about Xero? Do we have MFA turned on for that? And so we have to ask the same questions for all our different applications as well. There is some functionality called single sign-on, which will actually allow a lot of applications just to use the Microsoft one, which is a great way of doing things. But many applications do that at an extra cost as well. So there's an extra commercial consideration to think about. Then we have exceptions. So if we take our Microsoft 365 use case example from before, then it's possible with a multi-factor authentication enforcement policy to put some exceptions in, accept this account or accept this account. And a common one might be some vendors, some third-party vendors that need to log in. They might say, oh, we've got all these people sharing an account, so we need an exception to MFA because we can't share our MFA. There are plenty of solutions to avoid that while still securing your system with MFA. So I would strongly suggest that if you have vendors saying that they don't want MFA, then really engage with someone who can assist and drill in ironing out whether those exceptions do actually need to be there. Because really, I think with today's technology stack that's available, there's really no excuse, I think, to have any exceptions on your MFA policy. And the final thinking point here is strength. So an MFA system, like I mentioned previously, can be text messaging, it can be an app, it can be a few different things. However, not all MFA methods are created equal. It's generally considered today that the app is one of the best baseline multi-factor authentication methods, and receiving a text or a phone call is considered much poorer. And the reason for that is a concept known as SIM hacking, where if someone has your cell phone number and they know that your MFA is going to that, they can potentially what's called social engineering or convince the telco that you want your phone number ported to them, and then they move the phone number to them, and then they're getting all your MFA tokens as well. Whereas an app is much more secure, relies on you being you and you proving that you are you as well. So that's something to think about as well, particularly when you're looking at adopting a more secure. So anything is better than nothing, but if we have the choice, we want to favour app-based, and it's probably worth pushing our app vendors as well to rely on more than just text messaging for MFA. Okay, let's focus on the hard stuff now. So application control. Yeah. So this is a common one where a lot of IT professionals and integrators find this difficult to implement and so won't prioritize it. But it really is actually worth prioritizing. So at Stratos, we manage a number of clients' IT security for them, and we do this as a baseline. And it does take us a bit of extra time, but it's definitely worth doing because the benefits are well worth it. It's essentially what kind of gold star security looks like, and it's not out of reach for New Zealand businesses to do. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, application control is essentially saying I won't allow any application to run unless it's on my list of approved applications on my system. If I try and run one, you'll see a message similar to the one down there that the staff member will get saying this app has been blocked by your system administrator, and you just can't run it. So not so great if you are running in an environment where you're constantly downloading new applications and running them, but definitely very well suited for probably most businesses, which is where you have a very static, predefined set of applications. It might be Microsoft Office, it might be some payroll app, it might be a CRM, those sorts of things. And we don't change those very often, so we can say, yep, this is our list of applications, and let's go with those. In addition, if you're running Microsoft 365, you've probably got the license to do this already. You probably don't have to buy any software to do it. A lot of this stuff is built into Windows if you're using Windows as your main application, like most New Zealand businesses are. So everything's there. As with, I might add, multi-factor authentication. A lot of that's built into Microsoft 365 as well. So, do you really have it? So, there's a weaker implementation of application control, but you should be asking questions around how tight really is it. And this kind of comes back to exceptions as well. So a common implementation of this, which is much less hard to implement, but less effective, is to just say everything in this applications area on my hard drive, program files, it can run. And I'm just going to block everything outside of that. So that's great. That's easy to implement. Most applications are in there, but it means we can just put a virus into that same area and double click on it and it will run, which isn't great. So if you're being told that you've got application control, it's definitely worth asking the question, do you really have it? And how is it set up? Just going that extra mile and asking that. Risks. So this is kind of paired with audit and enforce as well. So our risks are how we implement this control. How do we tell our system that this application is legit? Okay. So there's a number of different ways you can do that. One of it is just by the name of the file you click on. But there's other more advanced ways as well. I won't go into the technical detail of it, but there are multiple ways of identifying it. Some of those methods will essentially move the app back onto a blacklist if it's been upgraded and the file changes, right? But it's considered a lot more secure when you do that. So if you are implementing that methodology of doing it, which is more secure, you have to understand the risks as well, that if we're doing an upgrade, that we really need to test that in advance. We can't just kind of roll out our upgrade, and which we would hopefully test anyway, but even more so that if we're changing those files, we've got to be understanding that running those will just bring up that blocked message again after the upgrade, unless we re-fingerprint the application. I've got down audit and enforce, and this is again, implementing application control is kind of a journey in a way. It's not like those previous ones where you can just pretty much go tick, yep, turn it on, I'm done. The underworkings of Windows and the way applications run, there's actually generally an application that you think of as one application might be multiple applications. It might be 20 applications that are actually running under the hood. And every single one of those needs to be whitelisted. And some of those things might only run sometimes as well, and we might not be aware of them all, right? So this is why we can't just switch it on. And so we've got audit and enforce. So the system that's built into Microsoft 365 has an auditing mode. And so we would typically enable that for a period of time. And that's just going to essentially just listen and go, if I was switched on, I would block this, but I'm not going to block it. That builds up a big list that we can look at, and it goes, okay, here are all the applications that I would have blocked if I was on. And then we can actually just go, okay, is that application actually one that I want to block or not? Or should that be allowed? We can go through that. Once we've built up that list, then we can start look at rolling it out and turning it on. And because the potential impact here is quite high, we would typically have a pilot group and we would roll it out in stages to different groups. And I've just mentioned updates there again. So again, this is kind of paired with risks. We just need to think about updates to systems as well. So those are the three main areas, or the three areas of the Essential 8 that we're focusing on, that we've focused on today. So hopefully that's given you a bit of food for thought around 3 of the Essential 8. I've got a couple of other quick tips here in terms of security, which can be some quick wins just in Strata's experience for both ourselves internally and for our clients as well. The first up is phishing. So you might know phishing is kind of a colloquial term to describe a hacker trying to send you a fake email, getting you to click on links, getting you to provide your login details so they can then break into your system or put ransomware in your system and encrypt all your files. So a common response to that is not necessarily a core technology system. It's more training our staff to recognize these things. They're kind of the last line of defense. There's no technology that's 100% that's going to make you 100% secure. So one of the things we should be doing is thinking of, if the worst happens, an email gets through to us, to our staff member, are they going to do the right thing when they click on things? And one of these is to run a phishing campaign. So there's lots of solutions out there. We include one for all our clients that we look after, and we run it internally as well. And essentially what that's doing is it's just sending fake phishing emails to all your staff. We run it once a month. So every month someone gets a random phishing email, or everyone gets a random phishing email randomly distributed throughout the month. And then we have reporting wrapped around that as well. So we can see when someone clicked on it, they're automatically sent to some remediation training. So just some friendly training saying, next time, here's what you should have done. And we also have the option where you might see now there's a report phishing button. So our system is actually integrated in where it actually sends them a little well done if they click report phishing on the one that the phishing test that we sent. So the other thing we've done is we've made it quite a competitive bunch here at Stratos. So we've made it quite competitive as well. So we don't name and shame people that do click on links or anything like that, but we focus on people that recognize it and report the phishing as well. Just a quick note on the whole naming and shaming side of things. It's generally considered a bad idea because it will make people apprehensive to report that they've made a mistake. And we really want to kind of encourage people to, if they do click on a bad link, to actually let the right people know so that we can actually do something about it rather than just kind of trying to cover it up. So what we're doing is focusing on the positive, on the people that report it, and we actually tally up all the people that have successfully spotted the phishing email each month. And we have a leaderboard, and we're running that throughout the year. So in our fortnightly company meeting. We give an update on who's at the top of the leaderboard, and it gets quite competitive as well. And you actually have people out there going, "Oh, is this phishing? I want my points." Those sorts of things. They're looking for the simulation email to get the points, but they're also at the same time looking for real ones as well, which is, I think, a great culture thing to add. And the other thing just to note as well is kind of goes hand in hand. Security is privacy training. A lot of it does cross over with your email and those sorts of things, and disclosure of information. Mel's going to post the link for this in the chat, but New Zealand Privacy Commission does have free online training tools for staff, and we actually have one as part of our onboarding process here that we get all of our new staff to do, privacy ABC training, which is quite a simple little course that they go through, and you can set up with the Privacy Commission. This is all free. They'll set you up as a company in there as well, and they'll provide you reporting for your staff members so you can see who's completed the training and who hasn't. So we actually have an onboarding task that generates when a new staff member joins, and we make sure that that gets done and ticked off as part of that. So there's just a couple of extra tips I thought I'd mention as kind of quick wins. Don't necessarily fall into the essential 8, but they're also, I think, quite valuable as well. Questions? Mel, do we have any questions? Not a single question, not even about the pug. Unbelievable. Okay. Well, if you do have any questions that pop into your mind later on, here's my email address. So feel free to flick those questions on. Happy to help. If you want us to take a look at anything as well, we're happy to do that as well. Again, just flick me an email, and any concerns or you might be worried about that might have been kind of raised in your mind after going through this, I'm happy to help out. Oh, right, some questions coming in, hopefully about the pug.
The pug's name, John.
Yes, Donut is his name. Yeah, I actually, previous pugs that we've owned, I've named after characters from the movie Predator, but my wife refused to continue that trend, so we arrived on Donut for the latest pug. Yeah. Just a note on the next webinar we've got coming up, because we're going to be doing these regularly now. You'll be pleased to know it won't be me delivering the next one. So Steve will be delivering that, and that's on the Digital Workplace Conference that we recently attended. A bit of a rundown on that. And then end of May, we've got campaigns, communications, and engagement, which will be another one to look forward to. And Mel's, I think, posting the sign-up links for those in the chat as well. All right, so that brings us to a close. Thanks for everyone, and please send through questions if any arise through to my email. Thanks for attending.